Sitting at rank 6 in the British aviation tech tree, the Lightning F.6, as well as its premium counterpart, the F.53, stand out as, both in real life and in War Thunder, a unique and highly capable fighter. In this video, we'll be going over the history of this outstanding aircraft, as well as how to make the most of it in War Thunder. In 1944, English Electric, tired of making other manufacturers' aircraft and wanting to make something of their own, hired aircraft designer and keen proponent of supersonic fighters, Teddy Petter, to come up with something new. In 1947, he was authorized to build a single research aircraft, which was to be capable of flying at Mach 1.5. In 1948, this design incorporated two engines stacked on top of each other, and highly swept wings to stay clear of the Mach cone. In 1949, English Electric officially designated his project as the P1. Not content with Mach 1.5, Petter increased the wing sweep to 60 degrees to reach Mach 2, and in 1950 English Electric got a contract for 2 flying airframes and 1 static one. From 1953, the first 3 prototypes were built, although delays with the planned Rolls-Royce Avon engines meant that these were powered by non-afterburning Armstrong-Siddeley Sapphire engines. The most notable external difference between these prototypes and the production Lightning is the triangular air intake on the nose. In 1952, a second phase of prototypes were planned, targeting the goal of Mach 2, and were designated P1B, retroactively calling the first batch the P1A. These featured the Avon engines and the more familiar nose cone. In 1954, the P1A flew for the first time, officially breaking Mach on its third flight. At least that's what they thought. Unknowingly, the P1A actually broke the sound barrier on its first flight, but an issue with the Mach meter only showed it at 0.95 and wasn't discovered until a few days later. In 1956, the P1 was given the name Lightning to reflect its supersonic capabilities. In 1955, the Air Ministry found out about the brand new Tupolev Tu-22 designated Blinder by NATO, and were horrified to learn that it was to enter service in 1962. It could cruise for a long period above Mach 1.2 and could reach Mach 1.5 for a short while. Their brand new Gloster Javelin interceptors would be useless against this, its revolutionary new Firestreak infrared homing missile being simply outran by the much faster Tupolevs. This led to the issuing of Operational Requirement F155, which called for a faster design to be armed with an improved Firestreak. The release of Duncan Sandy's 1957 Defense White Paper made the argument that, due to the proliferation of nuclear missiles, it would be unlikely that the Soviets would use bombers to target the UK beyond the late 1960s, and that the imminent introduction of the brand new Bloodhound Mark II SAMs would offer enough protection for Britain's V-bomber bases to allow a retaliatory strike. Although there would be a window where the Bloodhounds weren't yet ready, but the Tu-22 would have entered service, rendering them vulnerable, and the F-155 wouldn't be ready either. Because of this, the F-155 was cancelled in favour of something that could be built immediately. This would come in the form of the English Electric Lightning, which was already flying, with the P-1B weeks away from its first flight. It could be operational with the Firestreak years before the Bloodhound 2, and its speed made it a serious threat against the Tu-22s if trying to catch them from behind. This was done in combination with a new missile designed to enable head-on attacks against aircraft that had been heated from supersonic friction, which was dubbed the Red Top. In 1958, the Lightning became the second Western European aircraft to reach Mach 2, being beaten by the French Mirage 3 just over a month prior. The first production variant was the Lightning F1 and was armed with 2 30mm Aiden cannons, as well as 2 hardpoints for either 2 more Aiden cannons, 48 RP-2 unguided air-to-air rockets, or 2 Firestreak missiles. whilst the AI-23 radar provided situational awareness, as well as missile guidance in the form of radar sleeving. The next major change to the Lightning was with the F3, which had higher thrust versions of the Avon engines, as well as a strengthened cone that finally cleared it for Mach 2.0 in service, the previous versions being limited to Mach 1.7. The radar was also upgraded to the AI-23B, and the Aiden cannons were removed to save space. These changes made it the highest performance Lightning yet, although the increased fuel consumption meant it had an even shorter range. The final British variant of the Lightning was the F.6, which was nearly identical to the F3 but could carry two 1200-litre drop tanks over the wings, and the ventral tank was modified to refit the previously removed twin Aiden cannons. Overall, the Lightning was a highly capable interceptor, being one of the fastest aircraft in the world, even to this day. It broke a number of records, including having the first true HUD and the first true HOTAS. It was truly a revolutionary aircraft at the time, and continued to serve for 30 years, finally retiring in 1988. The Lightning, however, wasn't without its drawbacks, and some trade-offs had to be made to accomplish feats like its zoom climb rate of 15,000 meters in a minute. It had a very short range, with only 15 minutes of fuel at full tilt, and a theoretical maximum range of just 1,300 kilometers under perfect conditions. The radar was antiquated, especially closer to the end of its service life, and was hard to operate, requiring you to sort of put your head in a rubber tube to see it, blinding you to the outside world, unlike in War Thunder where it's nice and visible in the cockpit. The Lightning had no space for chaff or flares, and never received any, nor did it receive an RWR, which would have given it a lifespan of mere minutes had it seen frontline combat over Europe. It could also only carry 2 missiles due to a lack of hardpoint space. Its rather large tricycle undercarriage meant that no hardpoints or fuel tanks could be mounted under the wings, severely limiting space. Although this was needed to land it, the plane was often dubbed the Frightening as it had to land at nearly 300 km an hour, which was over 50% faster than other jets due to its very high stall speed. Probably the Lightning's most infamous incident was that of Holden's Lightning flight. On the 22nd of July 1966, Lightning XM135, the second production Lightning, was undergoing ground tests to resolve a mechanical fault. In one of these tests, Wing Commander Walter Taffy Holden accidentally engaged the afterburner, and the Lightning gained speed very quickly. Rapidly running out of runway and narrowly avoiding a fuel tanker, Holden had no choice but to pull back on the stick and take off. Due to it undergoing tests, the Lightning had no canopy, and Holden wasn't hooked up to a radio. It took him 12 minutes and 3 nail-biting attempts to land, dragging the tail of the aircraft along the runway, as he had only flown a tail-dragger trainer aircraft. It would be a bit of a stretch to say that the Lightning was an export success, but it was indeed exported. Saudi Arabia was its most prolific customer, buying around 40, whilst Kuwait was the only other one, buying 12. The export Lightning, as it was called, differed from the F.6 used by the British by having multi-role capability. An interesting choice, considering the Lightning's notoriously high stall speed. The F-53, as the variant was known, featured multiple accommodations for this role. For starters, the pack under the nose could be swapped between 2 mounts for either Firestreaks or Red Tops, 2 Aiden cannons, or a retractable pod with 48 unguided RP rockets. The overwing hardpoints, previously only for drop tanks, could be fitted with 4 combined rocket and fuel pods, 2 on each wing, containing 18 unguided SNEB rockets and 227 litres of fuel. An additional pair of hardpoints under the outer wings were also added, being able to carry either 4 more SNEB rocket pods or carry unguided bombs, either 2 540-pound bombs or a single 1,000-pound one. Despite all of these rather interesting changes, the F-53 still maintained the same functionality as the F-6, including its exceptional speed, climb rate, agility, and difficulty of maintenance. Kuwait did not keep their fleet flying for very long, retiring them in 1977 for the Mirage F1 after an unsuccessful attempt to sell them to Egypt in 1973. Saudi Arabia kept theirs a little longer, replacing them with the ground attack role in 1971 with the F-5E, and retiring them from interceptor duties in 1982. These were then sold back to Britain as part of the Tornado sale in 1985, who unsuccessfully tried to sell them on to Austria and Nigeria. When that didn't work, they were finally put to rest and shipped off to museums. In War Thunder, the Lightning F.6 sits at 9.3, just after the Javelin FAW Mark 9. Much like in real life, it excels at climbing and moving very quickly. With a full tank of fuel, which I'd always recommend taking, she's a thirsty girl, the Lightning can reach insane altitudes in mere minutes, whilst being able to reach Mark quickly too. At the start of the match, you're going to want to take advantage of this and climb, whilst maintaining a decently high speed. If you see other planes at altitude, be careful about engaging them in a head-on, as MiG-21s can catch you off guard with R3Rs, and your lack of countermeasures and an RWR doesn't help with that. Instead, use your energy to try and get a kill or two on people on the outskirts of the map, especially if they're slow or still climbing. Your red tops are pretty good missiles against slow targets. They don't have crazy pull, but they have good motors that give them some reach, especially against slow targets. Their seekers are also quite good, being able to lock some planes in front aspect at close ranges. Although, be careful with this. They'll likely not be able to pull in time unless it's a very hot plane like a Harrier or a Yak-38. They also have radar slaving, meaning if you're able to lock a target, you're able to target it with your missile without having to get your nose on. When it comes to engaging people, there's a few things you should take into account about your flight model. First of all, you compress at very high speeds, and you bleed energy quite badly when you turn at lower speeds. You're not much of a dogfighter, and the airframe feels rather floppy. You're still able to pull alright, and you don't bleed as much speed as something with delta wings, but it's decidedly not a dogfighter. Your cannons are in a bit of a strange place, being at a pack at the bottom, so they can be a bit tricky to aim. The damage on your Aidens is alright, if not completely consistent, but they're definitely workable guns. Don't worry too much about the stock grind. While it may seem daunting, your fire streaks are more than capable for your BR, although have a very short range, and your guns still hit hard. On my first ever game on the F6, completely stock and in a 10.0 up tier, I was still able to get an ace. Due to its complete lack of air-to-ground munitions, the Lightning F.6 is only really functional in ground RB as an interceptor, preventing the enemy from doing their own CAS. In Air RB, the Lightning F.53 is identical to the F.6, so instead we're going to talk about it in ground RB with its new CAS loadouts. For ground battles, I'd recommend bringing this loadout. You can also swap out your missiles for RP rockets, but I wouldn't recommend this as they have very little pen, and your snebs should be enough. I wouldn't recommend the bombs, as your lack of CCIP makes them less consistent to aim when compared to your snebs. What you want to be doing is flying fast and hitting people with rocket salvos. If you stay low, you give SPAA a very low window to engage you, which helps a lot with your survivability. As your snebs are heat rockets, they'll do some serious damage to most tanks, and will kill pretty much everything without ERA if you salvo enough at them. The F-53 can also be used as an interceptor, as you still have the same flight model and missiles as the F-6, allowing you to stop your enemies from cassing your team. In up tiers, be very careful about what air the enemy spawns, as 10.3 in ground RB is home to some absolute monsters that will destroy you, such as the J-7E. Once you have your Lightning F6, you're going to want to spade it. To do that, we're going to start with fuselage repair, new boosters, and red tops. After those, go for engine, compressor, wings repair, G-suit, cover, and airframe. With your performance spaded, go back to work on the offensive 30mm and the new 30mm cannons before finishing it off with the EFS. And for the F-53, you're premium, so you don't have to listen to any of that. Instead, the F-53 comes on sale around once a year, usually in early August. As it's similar to the Tech Tree Lightning for Air RB, and Britain arguably has better CAS for 9.3, I'd recommend getting it if you're interested in the plane itself, or you're a collector. There's other premiums that would be better to grind with. And that's it for the Lightning as it currently stands in War Thunder. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, then liking and subscribing would mean a lot to me. If you'd like to vote on the next video's topic, there'll be a poll in my Discord, link in the description. And that's all from me. I've been girltwink, fly safe.